Nico, clear that up first. Are you still in Brazil?
Yes, fortunately, I am still in Brazil.
But you are keeping a watching brief for us on events in Washington. Let's start with the big one. Does anybody in the United States know that we may, this evening, begin a countdown to the end of the human race in this Zaporizhia false flag operation?
Of course not, man. Everybody's still preoccupied with their left versus right nonsense, or not even left versus right, really. Democrats versus Republicans. It's interesting because I was listening during one of your commercials. Someone, you were talking about how leftists attack you for being left of them, and they call you conservative for being left of them. And that's where people seem to be focused on right now. But I've already seen that there's already seemingly a false flag propagandist operation being put out on social media that Russia's going to attack itself. Come on, that's ludicrous. They always say that, right? Just like Assad attacked himself in Syria right as the war in Syria is about to end and the West is about to leave. Just like they claim Russia attacked itself. It's always for me. What's the most frustrating about this entire conversation is the fact that we actually have to say the obvious. Why would a country attack itself? But we have to say it, because otherwise people will legitimately believe that Russia wants to go to war with itself and that this isn't just another ploy by NATO.
Yes, we have to say it, but like you, to be honest, I'm kind of reaching the end of my tether in explaining it to people. But let's be grateful for the existence of social media, where at least a considerable army of people now is assembled that is aware, more aware than they have ever been, is conscientized, and is now more free of the dead hand of the anti-First Amendment powers of the US state, its politicians, its deep state apparatus, thanks to an important judgment that you've been highlighting this week. Explain, please, to the audience what happened.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of cases that have come down the pipeline lately, basically highlighting the fact that the Biden administration has been working closely with social media companies in order to censor, quote unquote, misinformation or disinformation for the interests, as they say, of national security. Now, a judge actually came out and said that this is illegal, that it specifically violates the First Amendment, and that the Biden administration must cease all contact. Now, this is actually something separate that took place after a couple of weeks ago, a committee in Congress found that the Biden administration was also doing this to censor people in other ways via social media. So Congress and the court systems have both found out basically that the Biden administration has been collaborating with social media. Now, when I've talked about this in the past, and I'm sure you have as well, we were called conspiracy theorists for suggesting what appeared to be obvious, right? And now we have corporations and media conglomerates like CNN saying that they're condemning this. They're saying that free speech is actually a right-wing belief and that the right has won this victory for the First Amendment.
Yes, it is, as we say in Scotland, arse for elbow. We've got the left defending censorship and the FBI and the CIA, and the right defending freedom of speech. It's difficult to, I mean, if I were arriving from Mars, I'd find that quite difficult to understand, given what I know even about recent history. It was the feds that killed Fred Hampton. It was the feds that killed Malcolm X, that killed Martin Luther King. It was the feds that killed Bobby Kennedy and Jack Kennedy. And now the liberals are the biggest backers of the feds.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because, Biden just came out and said that he's not going to release any of the JFK documents. Once again, advocating for censorship. And what I find most interesting about this is the fact that you have Democrats and liberals going on the news in attacking this judge because they want this relationship with the federal government and social media companies to continue. However, what they're forgetting is that given how horrible Biden has been, it is extremely likely that the GOP is more than likely going to take over after this administration is done. Why would they want that type of power to be continued through the GOP? And would we see this narrative persist if the GOP was doing the same thing that the Biden administration was doing? My answer is probably no, we wouldn't. In fact, they would be complaining about this. But here we are, it's team sports, right? If my team is doing it, it's okay. If your team is doing it, well, then you got to go to jail. And that's how it goes.
I mean, there isn't any longer any doubt. I speak full disclosure as one in court now in Ireland against Twitter. Twitter has no defense because they themselves have confessed to the level of state collaboration in which the previous ownership of Twitter was involved. It's no longer possible to contend that sticking a fake Russia state-affiliated media label on me for an entire year, bringing forth death threats, having to move house, etc., was a decision made by a legitimate executive in the Twitter corporation, unprompted by a state agency, either above or below the line. We'll find out which when the court case develops. I think Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk and the Twitter papers, the Taibbi reports, have done us all a terrific favor in exposing the extent of the corrupt collaboration, secret corrupt collaboration. Worse than secret, as you say, we were attacked, we were accused of being lunatics for suggesting that which is now in a fact.
Facts, 100%. And the CISA, which was originally created to basically police cyber attacks, ended up being used by the Biden administration specifically to monitor social media and obviously work with the social media companies to do it. And it was specifically to monitor social media and monitor people to sway the midterm elections in favor of the Democrats. Well, they said what they were doing was policing misinformation and disinformation ahead of the midterm elections. How is that not election interference? So now the court case recently where the judge adjudicated that they had to stop working with social media companies was specifically regarding COVID misinformation, disinformation, which we now found out we know now that the actual entities, the institutions who were in charge of the information were wrong in a lot of cases, and that a lot of these mainstream media companies were wrong, and none of them were taken down like average people who were taken down for reporting, like doctors, literal doctors were taken off of social media. But now we're finding out that there was election interference due to the same type of collaboration. So once again, there were people taken off of social media. I was demonetized and taken away from the partner program for stating the obvious, that the Democratic Party and at times the Republicans as well work with social media companies in order to censor people who are telling the truth about election interference and election fraud, and that election interference and election fraud is alive and well in not one but two parties. And we were removed. So I want to, not only does this need to stop, but in my estimation, there needs to be some accountability here.
It is a cyber attack on American democracy to firebomb the New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop, to adduce more than 50 senior retired spooks, intelligence figures, to say it was Russian disinformation. That's a cyber attack on American politics. It is a cyber attack on this cycle of American politics to literally remove speeches and interviews of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because somebody doesn't like what he has to say. The man's running at nearly 20% in the opinion polls. He's a credible presidential candidate. He's being taken off. His videos wiped off social media. That's a cyber attack.
That's a cyber attack, and that's election interference. That is election interference. And election fraud doesn't just mean taking a ballot out of a ballot box or changing a vote in an electronic machine. What it means, it's a collaborative effort to change the opinion or sway the outcome of an election from a greater entity that has the power to do so. What we are seeing is that, at least for right now, one party has power, and they're using all of their power to get the desired outcome in order to circumvent actually having to do anything for the people to earn their vote. Because let's be honest, Biden has been horrible. The Democrats have been abysmal. The economy is absolutely garbage. And now the economy is so bad that it's actually affecting the economy all over the world, whether it be international relations with the situation with funding Nazis in Ukraine, whether it be how they're handling the domestic economy, just printing money. We don't know where the money's going. Well, actually, we do know. We know it's going to Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, who was a crackhead, who uses laundered money to smoke crack. I feel like we should remember that. Everybody should never forget that. We see that the Democrats would want to use every single outcome and tool that they have at their disposal to get votes in their favor, except actually doing what they were elected to do.
Now, Bobby Kennedy is lucky. They're only trying to eliminate his videos with extreme prejudice, so far at least. Donald Trump, they're trying to put behind bars literally for the rest of his life, because a man like him, of his age and weight and so on, wouldn't last an Epstein. He wouldn't last an Epstein minute behind bars. So they're trying to kill Donald Trump just because they know that he's got the beating of them. How's that for election interference? How's that case going? I heard tonight that the Mar-a-Lago papers case might now have to be dropped.
Wow, you know what? I haven't really thought about it like that, but when you put it like that, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe that Trump is a useful idiot. I do believe that he oftentimes does act as a tool for the Republican establishment, whether or not he knows he's doing it. But at the other end of that fence, Trump is also crazy unpredictable, right? And he's vengeful, and he hates the Democrats, and he even hates some of the Rhino establishment Republicans. So to put him in jail at this point, right, could mean that that's the last time we see Donald Trump in public, or ever. And the fact that they waited, they had how many years? 3 years roughly to do all this, and then coincidentally enough, around the same time that this Peter Hotez guy comes in to smear RFK Jr., Donald Trump's cases all take off at the exact same time, virtually leaving not just one avenue, but multiple avenues to make sure that he does not see the light of day during this election, or is at least so encumbered in court cases that he won't be able to accurately to effectively, run for president. And now, who knows? This is Donald Trump, right? So Donald Trump, if there's anybody who can run for president from jail, it might be that guy. However, what we are seeing, whether it be the Biden administration's collaboration with Hotez and the media, the Biden administration using social media to censor people, the Biden administration and their Department of Justice, because everybody always says, what does Biden administration have to do with that? Bro, it's their Department of Justice. It's U.S. attorneys that their Department of Justice approve and appoint. It's federal judges that their Department of Justice approve and appoint. Yeah, it has everything to do with it, because Biden is literally their boss. That is election interference. Well, I'm not living there anymore. You know, good luck to everybody who is. But the U.S. is a banana republic. It is. When we're seeing former presidential candidates and presidents being attacked and thrown in jail for something they did while they were president, when we have never seen that before, no matter how bad they have been, I mean, literally committing war crimes, that is a banana republic. We look no different than a lot of the countries that the United States interferes in to overthrow their governments or to install governments.
Nico House, as always, a great pleasure to meet you
Thank
on
you.
the airwaves. Nico House, political commentator, founder of MCSC Network.